A disturbance in the stew, I feel. New Jedi listeners. Strong they are. Subscribe they must. Yes?
Hello there.
Incoming transmission.
You will go to the Dagobah system. There you will learn from Yoda, Master of the Stew.
A Jedi's strength flows from the stew.
There'll be no one to stop us this time.
Strong is the stew.
Yoda, you seek Yoda.
Yes.
Hello there and welcome to Yoda Stew, the strongest stew in the galaxy. A Jedi's strength flows from the stew. This is your dedicated spot for all things Star Wars. I'm your host, Ezra, here to guide you through the latest Star Wars news, insights, and discussion from a galaxy far, far away.
Red 12 standing by.
Red 6 standing by.
Red 4, standing by.
Red 11, standing by.
Red 9, standing by.
Red 2, standing by.
Lock as foils in attack position.
I have a bad feeling about this.
And you thought they smelled bad on the outside.
Hey, Star Wars fans, welcome back. Got a guest back here because we got a big one to break down today. Some big controversial stuff. So I got my friend, Super Gains Bros, Sir Matt from Bend the Knee. How's it going, buddy?
Oh, dude, it's good. You know, as anytime you and I are talking Star Wars, because that's what we're going to be talking about today. Not just Star Wars, but the Star Wars fandom. And I'm excited because this is one you and I talked a lot about behind the scenes. You and I really have never talked about the Star Wars community,
right,
as a whole, even though we have been a big part of the Star Wars community over the past couple of, since the past 7 years.
Yeah, it's past 7 years. I know, it's insane, dude. And so, like, I am kind of just blown away by what has been going on. I was like debating, do we start with this topic or that topic? We're going right at it. We're just going to go right at it. There is a freaking fight going on in the Star Wars fandom. I've never seen it this bad.
Big.
It's just crazy, dude. So you've got literally Star Wars theory versus Star Wars explained. Just a throwdown, just an all-out throwdown on the socials, over on Twitter, over on YouTube. And I'm sure there are literally by now 50 to 100 videos covering this. So I honestly feel like if you're looking for Star Wars news, this is the freaking news today, which is just insane to me. And we're going to kind of break it all down, give you our thoughts and some takeaways on it. But I think I messaged you on Thursday. It was Thursday or something. And I said, have you seen this? I was just like, Matt, like, dude, have you seen what's going on? And like, then you started watching the videos. Like, so what are your initial thoughts about this craziness? Should I give some context to it a little bit just for probably?
Yeah,
maybe?
I think so. Maybe there's some people who don't know.
Yeah.
I would kind of honestly almost find it hard to imagine if you don't know what it is that's essentially going on, because I mean, it just seems like it's all any Star Wars creators talking about right now.
Right. It's basically, as we all know, the Acolyte is canceled. The Wokalite.
Yeah,
there we go.
We'll talk about that too.
We'll talk about that later. I didn't call it that, but that's what it's doing anyway. All right. So the Acolyte is canceled, and essentially there was this campaign that was going around on Twitter where they were trying to demonetize several content creators. And it was apparently retweeted by Molly Damon, who is from Star Wars Explained. She's Alex's wife. And what it's trying to do is it's actually actively asking YouTube to demonetize these channels, including Star Wars Theory. So it was to take away their channel, if I understand it right. And it was this, I think it's called Rewriting Ripley was the original Twitter account that possibly wrote it. I mean, Molly even comes out and clarifies after Star Wars Theory went and did several video responses to this. She clarifies like, hey, I just agreed with the actual, campaign and I retweeted it. And then apparently the podcast that sort of came up with this or whatever, or the creator behind it, chose to remain anonymous. So, I mean, this is all just, it's all crazy. And they accuse these content creators of being racist, of harassing Star Wars actors and actresses, and attacking the creators for being woke, for inclusive, for diversity, they're attacking females specifically, right? So they were saying that this has turned into sort of a culture. They were also saying that maybe other Star Wars content creators might be they might be well-meaning, but if they see success, right? If this attack or if this type of negative coverage of the Acolyte is successful, other well-meaning Star Wars content creators would jump on board. And it's insane. Instead of just the Acolyte sucked, you know what I mean? But Theory came out and he responded, and he basically broke down a lot of old tweets, old emails where he paints a different picture of these individuals, of Molly and Alex specifically, in terms of like the harassment or harassment. To be honest with you, he pulls up in his video, he goes over This Week in Clickbait, where at the time Star Wars Explained, Alex was bringing up This Week in Clickbait, and he was talking crap about Star Wars Theory, right? He was actually talking crap about him, and he even then apologized to Theory and said, "Hey, sorry about that." After he met him, he was like, you know, he seemed like a really nice guy and everything, but it just, I don't know. It was just a lot of this back and forth between them over the years, and it really came down to, he was saying these guys are about the money, they're about the clicks, they're about the views, and it doesn't seem like their hearts are truly there in terms of like, you know, being authentic Star Wars content creators who really are just in this because they love what they're doing. They were really curious as to why Theory was so successful. And there's another big one, Matt. This one I think is interesting because we were around for this. This was actually crazy. Back when all of this started, Star Wars Theory, you and I are running a channel called Rebel Watch, and we are literally just small little podcast, more of a podcast than we were any YouTube videos, right? I mean, we were just really kind of just chatting and throwing some stuff up there. But I remember watching this through the rise here. This was Star Wars Theory coming up, and we were watching a channel. At the time, it was called Star Wars Minute. It was not called Star Wars Explained. It was called Star Wars Minute. Now, Star Wars Minute is Alex and Molly Damon. It was Alex at the time. He decides to change the name of his channel to Star Wars Explained. And the channels that were using that tag were Stupendous Wave. Stupendous Wave is another big over 1 million, subscriber channel. And Star Wars Theory was also tagging everything Star Wars Explained. And so he then actually sent an email, I believe, to Stupendous Wave, because the crazy part about this is the OG, the original Stupendous Wave, who doesn't say anything to the fandom, comes out of the shadows and is literally like, actually, Star Wars Theory is correct on everything that he's saying. He was like, actually, Alex did ask me if he would be offended. I think I'm kind of summarizing here, if he used or changed his channel to Star Wars Explained, because they were basically creating videos, and Matt knows the algorithm really well, creating videos around the tag and the title Star Wars Explained. So he changed his whole channel name and all the tags in his videos to match that tag that was being fueled by Stupendous Wave and Star Wars Theory. And then later on, Star Wars Theory is criticized for using the Star Wars Explained tag, and everyone's basically saying that he was kind of jumping on the success of Alex Damon, and that he was really using his channel to propel his own channel, if that makes sense. And then Stupendous Wave comes in and is like, actually, that guy switched his channel and asked if we would be offended, like over 7-8 years ago, right? And so that's just a quick rundown of some of the drama. There's obviously more, but it's mostly blowing up on Twitter. There's response videos, and it's just crazy. So Matt, with that, just kind of initial thoughts, and what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, here's my whole take on this whole situation. Is one, first and foremost, let me just toot Ez and I's horn a little bit here when it comes to talking about Star Wars. Come on. We had Rebel Watch, then we did Hyperspace Hangout. That got well over 60,000 subscribers on YouTube. And then, Ez and I, hey, we got a little busy, started doing our own things. You turned you have a TikTok that's Star Wars, and you almost at like 100,000 with that, right? And the same with the YouTube channel. So it's not like we're nobodies when it comes to the Star Wars fandom.
Been around,
right? We've certainly been around the block here. But we have never worked or done anything with Star Wars Theory or Star Wars Explained. We have done some things with some other big creators like Coffee with Kenobi and Force Toast. Some other, there's obviously some other ones out there we've done some collaborations and stuff with. We've done stuff with the 501st, right? And those guys and stuff like that. So that's all been super fun and everything. So, but I will say that we've never done anything with Star Wars Theory or Star Wars Explained. So I certainly can't speak to them like on a personal level, but I know that a lot of the fandom specifically just does not like Star Wars Theory. I think he just rubs a lot of people the wrong way. Obviously, he rubs a lot of people the right way because he's like the single biggest Star Wars channel,
right?
Bigger than the Star Wars channel itself.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people dislike him simply for that fact, right?
Yeah.
They simply dislike him because he is so big, whether it's jealousy or whatever. I've never, to me, he's okay. I mean, I like a lot of his videos. Sometimes he does the voice and that kind of, I'm not as into the voice, right? But
right.
That's his thing, and obviously people really love it. I mean, he makes good videos. I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, is making good content that people resonate with and you find your audience, and he certainly has. But I will say this, everything that he shared on his video talking about it, and he has the receipts. I mean, he has the emails. Yes, everything that Star Wars Explained was certainly asking him. At the time, he was smaller than Star Wars Explained.
Yeah.
Which was at the time, Star Wars Minute. And you could tell that it's just by the nature of those emails that he's sending out, like, hey, maybe we could do a collab and all this stuff. And you and I have also been around YouTube and a lot of other channels and things like that. And you kind of know, I would say, what's the word I want to use? Like creeper, right? There's definitely people who were being on YouTube and being successful in social media content creation. There are definitely people that will reach out to you that in a way they want to try to use you. I mean, at the end of the day, I'll just say it is what it is. So I really actually don't do a lot of collaborations. You and I both, we don't really do a lot of, especially over, Bend the Knee, Game of Thrones. We did a collaboration with another big Game of Thrones creator, and it went really badly, to say the least. They actually don't even make content anymore. But they were way bigger than us. They were way bigger than us at the time, but it's just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So I can say that is a thing. Like that is a thing that does exist in this sphere of content creation. So everything he was saying is certainly stuff that it's like, oh, I've seen that before. Right. Like, I mean, I've definitely seen that before. But yeah, I mean, it's obvious that over the years they have just disliked the fact that he's become so successful. And I think, and this is something you and I are going to talk about here in a big bit, right? Yeah. Since like 2017, it really did kind of start with The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
And I want to save all the stuff we're going to talk about because it's going to be a big segment of today's show. But I would say since The Last Jedi, the word woke in Star Wars has become getting thrown around. It's been getting thrown around a lot in just a lot of things, right? I mean, a lot of, anytime it seems like you're using you want to have diversity in your cast, it could be woke or this or that. And the Star Wars fandom has split a lot in the Disney era, for better or for worse, right? And it seems like a lot of times anyone is critical of Star Wars for any reason. You do have, I mean, don't get me wrong, you do have people out there that are saying like, well, it is woke or whatever. And then you have a lot of other people, like anytime you may be critical of it without diving into that sphere, like you and I have experienced that, where we were critical of just the sequels in general. And people like, well, you're like you're hate bashing and all these things. Like, no, I think the script sucks. I don't really care about the cat. Like you could change the cast to whatever you want, and the script is still bad, so it doesn't matter, right? Which is part of the reason I think The Acolyte failed. Yep. I don't think The Acolyte failed because it was woke. I think it failed because the script was awful. If you replace all the actors with all white people, it's still a bad script. So it's not that it was diverse and woke that ruined The Acolyte. The script sucked. I sent you a meme the other day of Vader. Right, somebody changed it when Vader's with Luke, and the meme is like Vader being like, you don't, when Luke is at the end of Empire, right? He's if you only understand understood the power of the dark side, and
Right,
somebody
right.
changed it. It's like, only if you understood the power of one, the power of two, the power of many. And it was like, oh, and then Luke, screams no.
God.
So it's just this funny meme, and it's like, yeah, that's the thing. That was lame. It was dumb. It was cringy. It could have been all men doing it, and it still would have been cringy.
Yeah, it was bad. So one of the ways that Matt would, I think, say this is that like it's not that it was woke, it's that the script was a joke.
Exactly.
It was a joke.
Yeah, it was a joke of a script. It sucked, and it's why it got canceled. So, and we're going to dive way more into that here in a second. But the point I'm trying to bring up is essentially when you have people be critical of it, and I think Disney is somewhat guilty of this too, because even Amanda Stanberg, who I actually thought did a good job in The Acolyte. I mean, you and I were talking about it the last time on here. Like, I think she has a really difficult job of playing two characters.
That's hard. Yeah.
She wasn't the problem. The problem was the script. Like, but you do have then Disney, like when Reva, we saw this in Reva and Kenobi, is Disney goes out and they say, well, the problem is like sexist fans, or it's the alt-right fans that are watching Star Wars. No, the problem might be that the product sucks. But what happens is then you have the fans who are divided, or saying, well, if you didn't like it, then you are racist or sexist. And that's kind of what's happening here, where it seems like Star Wars Explained, as well as the other groups, are trying to take down a collective group of Star Wars channels, one of which is Star Wars Theory, under the guise of saying he is racist and he is this and he is that. And maybe he is. I don't know. I don't know him personally. I've watched some of his videos. I don't watch all of them, so I can't comment on everything he said, but I've never seen him actually say my problem with this is that it's woke.
Right. No.
And in fact, my problem actually with Star Wars Explained in this whole deal, and these people attacking these other Star Wars channels, which you and I have experienced, of people trying to like demonetize and take your channel down, is that if you really want to go after the big Star Wars channels, then why was Mike Zeroh not on that list of channels?
Why was he not on that list?
Because Mike Zeroh is known. I mean, Ryan Johnson made fun of him.
For sure. He was on Ryan Johnson's list clear back at The Last Jedi. Yeah.
Mike Zeroh is a very large YouTube creator with over 300,000, followers. And if you literally go look at his YouTube page, every word is woke. I mean, he is somebody, and that's his thing, and he's got his group of people, and he makes obviously good enough videos to get a big group of people, and he's found his corner of the Star Wars fandom. But if you were genuine in your argument about trying to take down the channels that you viewed as like attacking people over race or whatever, then he should be at the top of the list, because he's almost a meme in the Star Wars community.
Yeah, I know. It's interesting that they picked on specific channels, and it's like, they really targeted them. What made those channels, like in particular, stand out over someone like Mike Zeroh? Was it just the views? Is it the audience, the influence, the subscribers? He's a huge freaking channel.
It's not like they don't know he exists.
Right, exactly.
That'd be impossible. He's been around for as long as Star Wars Theory.
Yeah, since the beginning. I mean, I first found him when he was like at 40,000 subscribers. He was talking about Rey. He was talking about Rey and the Force Awakens and stuff. I mean, but and actually, he went from a guy that started off kind of optimistic, a little quirky, and then started to really caught on early to what the agenda was. Which, like it or not, there is an agenda at Lucasfilm. Okay, and he didn't like it, and so then he kind of went to the extreme. But he's not on these lists. He's not on this list in terms of like content creators that we should go after. So it feels really personal, and it feels like this attack was like there's some history between these different groups. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of what Star Wars Theory showed everybody, is like, hey, there actually is some history here between me and Molly and Star Wars Explained, and they seem to be kind of the head of this this other group. There's also a huge conspiracy theory out there. Well, not conspiracy theory. I don't know. It's just a theory that the Rewriting Ripley, which is the Twitter account that I think was behind this, it looks like there's former Lucasfilm employees that are behind that, actually, or current or
I wouldn't doubt it. Because
wouldn't doubt it. And it seems like they were in charge of some of the social media. And as you said, Matt, like he's bigger. His social media posts, they get more engagement. Like he gets more engagement on his stuff than they do on their own social media sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. And so I think they're like, they really just there's a beef there. There's this history going all the way back. And he relatively, I believe, Star Wars Theory relatively stayed out of a lot of this stuff, just like Stupendous Wave. I said he was kind of just out on the fringe. And as Matt said, we've done the same thing largely because these people are really toxic. Or if you don't say the right thing right away, if you don't identify your political stance or what you believe out the gate, they're not going to podcast with you, or they're going to be highly critical of every word you say. And it's turned into, it's just not fun when you go about it that way. We're not having fun anymore. And it's all been super charged up with a lot of, just a lot of buzzwords, and a lot of those buzzwords tie back to politics. And it's just sort of like this is kind of our escape to get away from all that and go to a galaxy far, far away. But yet we've turned it into something else, Yeah. So
no, yeah. Couldn't have said it better. Yeah. I mean, the funny thing actually is that if Disney actually obviously doesn't want him taken down. If Disney wanted him taken down, they very easily could just be like, hey, all of the clips and stuff like that you use of our content, yeah, we don't like that. And I mean, they could take him down like in a day. Yeah, simply because, I mean, whether you want to use fair use or not, right? He uses clips all the it would be very easy for Disney to just be like, yeah, nope, you're done. Yeah. So even though there are Disney employees and Lucasfilm employees that have like publicly and personally like made fun of him, like I don't understand how Pablo Hidalgo has anything to do with Star Wars anymore after publicly making fun of him for like crying. And that was obviously like genuine on screen, where the Mandalorian season 2, he's like very emotional. I got him. I got emotional. Go back and watch it on our old Hyperspace channel. I mean, I cried. I was like, dude, and I didn't even, I wouldn't watch Star Wars Theory. I watched it early that morning before I got to work. I got up super early, and I think I even posted a little thing about it. Yep. We posted a little thing about it like that early in the morning, because we're just like, oh my God, this is amazing. And it's some of the best things. I mean, and then that's a thing is like, and there's been other ones he's pointed out as well. I know there's some girl, I don't know her names, but I know he's posted out and she has something to do with it as well. But it's like, why are Disney employees making fun of him personally? Like I don't like that. Like that. No, that's that. I mean, that's bad. That's stupid. Like they should be fired from Disney for doing that. Like that's a PR disaster. Yeah, I'll say this, just like wherever you work, like you have sometimes, for me, for example, I have a policy. I can't go out online and be super vulgar and misrepresent the school that I work for. Otherwise, it's like, hey, this student like is right. You're done. Exactly. They're like, you're done. Like if I was laughing and making fun of somebody else on the internet and I was openly mocking them like that, I would like, hey, why don't, like if you went onto some kid's thing and be like, hey, like some kids Twitch, maybe they're like twitching Fortnite or something, you're like, hey, maybe you should spend more time studying so you don't get F's, you'd be fired. I'd be fired. Yeah, I'd be fired. And then you think about it like this. Let's say Star Wars Theory is that kid, and I'm openly like mocking and making fun of him. Oh, ha, boo, boo, boo. Cry about like Luke Skywalker or whatever. I mean, he changed his whole, like Pablo changed his whole Twitter and like put a whole banner up to kind of like make fun of him and everything, and double down, locked his account. Like, I mean, it's weird to me that some of us are held to a higher standard than those guys. Yeah. Like, why? It just feels so strange. So, and it was disappointing, honestly, because you're like, that was sort of a point in Star Wars where everyone should have maybe came together and like, oh yeah, sick, and we finally made something that everyone freaking likes across the board, and yet we're gonna mock this dude. That's unbelievable. So, yeah, it just turned into it really is. I think from his point of view, it's like it turned into jealousy because he just kept making content that he loved, and it just sort of fueled his channel, and he was doing the right things, and he stayed quiet, and he just worked hard. You remember that video that we watched where I think it's great. I love seeing behind the scenes with content creators because you and I, we love this stuff. It's fun. And to see him talk about seeing starships coming out of the walls. Remember where he talked about how he got big, and he's just like, I literally made videos like 24/7. Right. And it's so crazy to me. A lot of the people that I see get called to the red carpet events and everything, it's like, I'm super happy for them. And I'm not trying to lump everybody all into one category or whatever, but they all seem like really cool individuals, and they're have awesome, cool channels. And Star Wars Theory, the way he explains it is like, he was not that cool kid. He was a super nerdy kid who had a lot of stuff going on, and he just hated his life, didn't like where he was at, and he wanted to change it, and he went crazy. And he tells you this story, and he opens up about it. And then just to see kind of the way that he's treated behind closed doors. And also, one of the things that came out on Twitter, and this is still out there publicly, anybody can go look at it, is the private messages between
Star Wars Explained and other content creators, possibly. I think they asked Star Wars Theory to keep them anonymous, but they all share DMs where literally Alex is talking crap and openly apologizes at least twice in an email and says, "Hey, I'm sorry, man. I was jealous of you."
Star Wars Theory goes through and he's like got years worth of like times of him apologizing.
What so you talk about people who are like, so the whole post is about harassment and abuse and people who are continually like making racist comments. I mean, they take it pretty far. They say like these things are sexist, racist, etc. And they're accusing them of this prolonged harassment. But literally, he shows you prolonged harassment that's going on in like secretly in the Star Wars fandom for years. And I'm surprised more. I'm actually very happy and glad that a lot of people have come out and responded, because it's just inappropriate, dude. Like you said, you and I have been through it in other fandoms, and it's awkward. It's so like we're all just trying to have fun, and like typically your video might blow up over here, and if I did something similar, that's gonna like generate some views for me.
Yeah,
and there's plenty of room for all of that to kind of happen, and these individuals there's a huge jealousy factor, and I just don't. I don't get it. I don't know what they wanted to be the number one, the top dog, the biggest. And surprisingly, the funny thing is, you go out and look on Star Wars, it's like Lore Master and Stupendous Wave are also, they have over 1 million subscribers, and Star Wars Explained is still sitting at like 800, which is fine.
Well, now it's dropping.
It's dropping. Yeah,
fast.
It's dropping.
Yeah.
Because again, you can't a lot for the longest time, nobody really knew sort of what the dynamics were and stuff. And it's just in the few collaborations that we have had, we've seen people be very toxic, and we've seen people just be kind of aggressive, and we're just here shooting the crap, just trying to talk Star Wars, and it's just something fun. It's an escape, and it gets way too serious. And then there's all these like actual political campaigns and moves prior to the release of something to like set the stage for, if you don't like this, then here's part of the reason why. And like, if that's obvious to everybody, you know what I'm saying?
It's not just Star Wars too. I mean, this stuff happens in a lot of different things. Like I was considering making Hogwarts Legacy content. Do you remember? There was, I mean, obviously it's just a J.K. Rowling. A lot of people don't want to do it. And there was literally like a group of people, and they were like streamers and stuff like that were blacklisting people and going on people's streams, and like they were doing anything they could to get any like immediate, like if you go look at like the first week, like total people they don't even know, they would just go in and say like racist things in the comments. So like Twitch would be like, all right, well, we got to take this stream down. Right. And it's crazy. And they're still leaving comments here and there. You can see some just on people who like old like videos on YouTube and stuff. That was an actual effort, like a coordinated like thing, and where well, obviously it didn't work, because Hogwarts Legacy was the best-selling game of the year, which is ironic. Think about that, right? I mean, think about that. That's sort of when you execute properly, which is what we're going to be talking about here in a second in terms of Star Wars. When you execute properly and you put out a good product, that can persevere through all of those people trying to take it down. So that's a great example. Hogwarts Legacy, you have a group of people trying to take it down. It's a great product. It perseveres through that. They're saying that the Acolyte was taken down by the likes of these 3 or 4 channels that were hating on it. And that's why it got canceled. No, if it were a good project, it would persevere and it would still freaking be there, just like Hogwarts Legacy did. Like that's the whole point. And it is just super sad. It's honestly like they're completely exposed. Completely exposed. Yeah, they should change the name from Star Wars Explained to Star Wars Exposed. I mean, it's over.
It's over. It's over, Killmaster. Oh my god, dude. That is, man. So anyway, I mean, God, I don't even know. I'm just so. It actually is for me, because like we're watching the Acolyte, right? I'm gonna be honest with you. Because y'all had you on a couple times. It was like after episode 3, right? I think episode 3 of the Acolyte you came on, and I was like, I'm gonna need Matt on this one, because there was some controversial stuff on that, right? And I remember saying to myself, what's gonna happen if I just come out and say this sucks? I literally had that thought. I was like, what's gonna happen to me and my small little channel? Because just getting going again, and I'm like, are people gonna freaking hate on what's gonna happen? And interestingly enough, like, I don't know that. Hopefully they're looking at the metrics here, at least from what I'm seeing. Everyone was on board with that just sucked. And really, like, I think this is where the shills or the shilling sort of got exposed, because people who were resisting that super hard. We're tripling and doubling down. And I was even going to Star Wars Theories like stream and seeing people coming in saying, you know what, look, I always try to give a product a fair shake or whatever, but by episode 2 or 3, people were like out. Even people who were really like gonna try to persevere through it and see what's there were like, this sucks. So, and that's sometimes me. Matt knows this. I typically err on the side of being really positive about stuff. I'm sitting here going like, this is bad. And even my wife Lottie, she was like, doesn't know anything about this, and she's like, I just don't really care about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just there was nothing to care about. In contrast to that, look at Andor. Look at the cast of Andor. Look how diverse that cast is. Like, look at all the female characters in there. That's an insane. I mean, you've got Mon Mothma, Deidre, you've got Bix, you've got Marva, who was freaking Cassian's mom. I mean, you had like 4 or 5, maybe 6 women in there who were just knocking it out of the park. And an openly gay couple was in that as well too. Nobody cared. They loved it. It's one of the best things that has been done, actually, I think, by Lucasfilm under the Disney ownership. It's one of the best products in my opinion. And the ratings are still super high. And it persevered. It's going for a second season, even though its viewership wasn't as high as some other things, right?
Rogue One, strong female cast, one of the best Star Wars projects. I mean, Ahsoka didn't do amazing numbers, but it certainly did better numbers than that. And that's a strong female lead. It was really 2 female characters were the lead of that show, right? Ahsoka and Sabine.
Absolutely.
So, but there's other shows too, like House of the Dragon is 2 strong female leads, and that show crushes. I mean, it's just that Disney, and we've talked about this before. Anytime something goes wrong at Disney, they immediately start pointing fingers. Well, it's other people's problems. And they never say it's our problem. Like Kathleen Kennedy said, the problem with Solo was that fans didn't want to see a young Han Solo recast. It's like, so you're saying Alden Ehrenreich was the problem. And you and I've talked about this before. The problem with Solo was not Alden Ehrenreich, or Ehrenreich, or however you say his last name. The problem was that you released it at with less than 6 months from The Last Jedi, and I don't know, a month after Avengers Infinity War.
Terrible spot. Yeah.
Terrible spot.
It was overshadowed. Yeah. And The Last Jedi sucked. So
and The Last Jedi sucked. So people were like, I don't
controversial.
Yeah, and nobody knew what the movie was going to be about, because you did a Super Bowl commercial that was like 10 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was zero marketing for it. I still like Solo. I think it's just a fun Star Wars movie. It's not amazing. It's not, like Return of the Jedi good or Empire Strikes Back good, but it didn't have to be. It's just meant to be like a fun movie that, you go see. It's a summer blockbuster. I mean, that's exactly what it was. It was aimed to be. But like, you didn't market it right. It was not the cast's fault, whatever. It wasn't the director's fault, even though you fired the director, Ron Howard, to come in and save the movie.
Yeah. Dude. Okay. So that's an interesting one, because they talk about how, well, we can't really recast these legacy characters like Han Solo and Lando Calrissian. What are we freaking doing? We're still talking about a Lando Calrissian series that's still on the plate with Donald Glover. They still bring that up. So if they ever make that, and then are like, well, that then doesn't make any sense as to why Kathleen Kennedy said that, right? She's like, we've just found out that we can't do that. So she's making an excuse there. The Star Wars fandom just doesn't like that, so we're not going to do it. No, that is not at all the case. And there was actually a whole campaign on Twitter where people were like, make Solo 2 happen again. And it was. So
I still wish they would.
Me too. I'm totally down. It's one of the better products. And something else that's kind of interesting, right? So we covered Obi-Wan Kenobi, like the series. Now I'm biased. Matt knows my favorite character, Obi-Wan. Love him. Love seeing Ewan and whatever. It was not great. It was not trash, I don't think, but it was not great. I think I'm biased because I love to see Hayden and Ewan back on there, and it was like, okay, let's go. Kathleen Kennedy got so involved with that project that she tabled it year after year after year. She tabled it until she could kind of figure it out. Remember, we made some of those videos about, what was it, like Stuart Beatty or somebody was the writer who came on and was talking about different versions, and they cut his version. He had Commander Cody in there and all these really cool things. And I'm like, oh my God, like, that's a fumble. You guys should have done that. Regardless, because I don't care if Deborah Chow or whoever, runs it. It's still, again, it's like,
the average viewer does not care who the showrunner is, as long as it's good.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And so again, I'm fine with you being intentional about putting Deborah Chow in there. That's fine. Just make it a freaking good product. And she's highly involved in that and goes back and forth. And they get kind of a mediocre product. I mean, one that I really like. But I don't hear that Kathleen Kennedy was involved with like rewrites, reshoots, firing a direct. None of that in the Acolyte. She was involved in the Solo movie, as you said. Obi-Wan Kenobi, she was highly involved. Rogue One, they did all those reshoots, right? She almost fired Gareth Edwards and then basically said, okay, no, he's playing ball, so we're gonna redo that one. So her involvement and going in and sort of really checking on stuff seemed to actually pay off in some ways. I mean, maybe Kenobi could have been even worse, I'm not sure. But like it seems like it was needed and helpful in certain areas. Two places that she did not check in. The Last Jedi, Rian Johnson, she let him do whatever he wanted, okay? And The Acolyte. And they both are the two most controversial things in Star Wars to this day. So in a weird way, it's sort of like she let them go sort of unchecked and just have their own agenda, do their own thing. It feels that way anyways. And I'm just sort of blown away that there wasn't more, like who was watching The Acolyte and said, like just green lighting. Yeah, green light, green light, green light. I mean, that's just like unreal. It's episode after episode, and it was just poorly written, and it was hard to follow. It was confusing. It was awkward, and there was just the dialogue was falling flat, and the story had no. Okay, one of the things, Matt, and I mentioned this in the last, I kind of did a little rant podcast before this one. I was talking about how in Obi-Wan, she said this needs to be more hopeful. As she was reading it, it was too dire, it was too dark, it was too gritty. And there needed to be a hopeful aspect to it. Now, this is literally Obi-Wan's worst time. This is like the dark times, right? This is like terrible times. And she came in with that, like, we got to add a hopeful kind of spirit to it, which is how Leia got involved. That's how they did Princess Leia. They wanted there to be some hopeful aspect to it. Okay. Now you go to The Acolyte. There seems to be next to no involvement from Kathleen Kennedy to make it more hopeful or keep it more in line with what Star Wars is and what makes Star Wars great. Instead, there's zero hopefulness in that. There's no what is the hope in that story? Like there's no hope whatsoever. The Jedi are bad. Flat out, the Jedi are bad. Like across the board, they all lie. Every single one of them does something wrong and is flawed. And in the end, we're rooting for like what, May to go to the dark side, you know? And like it's just it's so off base, and it wasn't even funny. If you want to jam all those diversity, you know, the different characters from different backgrounds and different races and ethnicities and cultures, and then you also want to have a strong female lead, go for it. You have two shows. Again, Andor did it right. The Acolyte did it wrong. And that's
they did that in Rogue One, and it worked.
And it worked. Absolutely.
Because the plot was good.
The plot was good. It was a great plot. Yeah, it was an amazing idea.
Yeah,
like the lead in is
that's the problem. That's the difference between the two. Is if the plot sucks, it doesn't matter whether it's woke or not. It's just bad, right? I mean, again, like I said, like, you know, I mean, obviously, yes, there were a lot of channels being really upset that it was lesbian space switches, right?
Right.
There's definitely a lot of chance. So I'm not discrediting. I'm not discrediting that there were. But if you replace it with all men and they're all chanting and they're still saying the power of one, the power of two, the power of many, and they're doing it the same way, it's still going to be as cringe as it was the same thing. I mean, that's the problem. It was more cringe than Space Leia, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
my God, yes.
I mean, it makes Space Leia look like a masterpiece, right?
Like a masterpiece.
I mean, seriously. I mean, that's how cringe. That's how cringe it was. It didn't matter if it was women or men. It was still would have been stupid. So yeah, I mean, that's another one of the things is like it's not that Star Wars is. It's not like the bad Star Wars projects are bad because they're woke. They're bad because the script is bad, right?
Yeah.
And let me bring up. I'll bring up another example, which is something you and I want to talk about, right? Like, again. The problem with The Last Jedi, which I think is the biggest problem in all of Disney's Star Wars. Like, if you want to trace everything that's been wrong with Star Wars since Disney bought it, is that in 2017, they let Rian Johnson kill Snoke, who should have been the main villain of the third movie. That's the biggest problem. Not that it was woke. Remember, a lot of people are talking about, I'm blanking on her name. Purple hair.
Holdo. Oh, yeah.
Holdo. Yes. I remember. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Strong female lead. Right. Woke. Here we go. She wasn't. Too. Right. Yeah. Right. She was. She wasn't. There is a problem with Rose, and I'll get to that. But it's not her as a character. It's that Rian Johnson again took the established idea and said, "I'm going to do whatever I want." which is the problem. So, but if you go back to that one moment where they kill Snoke, to this day, it has derailed the entire Star Wars franchise, because then clearly Disney didn't have a plan. And Colin Trevorrow said, you just killed off the character I need for my entire movie. And he basically got booted. He got fired and booted off for being like, this doesn't work for me and my movie. And Rian Johnson said, well, I'm going to do what I want. But since that moment, Star Wars, every Star Wars project since they let Rian Johnson kill Snoke has essentially involved something to do with trying to make it work that Palpatine comes back. Right? Yes. I mean, it's been a subplot of every project since then.
You're right.
So every Star Wars project since then has had to adapt what should have been an original idea into, well, we kind of need to help. We kind of need to make it work so that Palpatine can come back in Rise of Skywalker. I mean, am I incorrect? What's the subplot to Bad Batch? Palpatine's cloning. What's the subplot to Mandalorian? Palpatine's cloning. What's the subplot to the Acolyte? Well, we're going to do the entire thing about the creation of life, which creates Anakin, and we're going to have Plagueis there at the end. And what's the whole point of that? To help bring Palpatine back in Rise of Skywalker. Every show, Way Between Worlds and Ahsoka, everything has been trying to fix the problem of The Last Jedi to Rise of Skywalker. I mean, maybe I'm reading it wrong, but
no, you're not.
Every project has been that's been the crux of every project.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, even every novel written, right? Every novel written in between there too. So all of their publishing and all of their main, TV shows, Disney Plus series, they're all trying to write towards, let's fix that Rise of Skywalker moment where Palpatine comes back. And I never thought about it like that. I mean, I guess I kind of knew that we all know that's happening. But to tie it all back to say, wow, since we killed Snoke, right? Since we decided to say, hey, he's done. And everyone looked around and said, cool. So what are you doing next, Ryan? And he said, bye, have fun. Like that's literally what happened. And he was like, sorry, I don't really know. That was somebody else's job, not mine. And that's why he'll never get another trilogy. He should never get another trilogy, because he has changed and altered the entire course of Star Wars. You're exactly right. Ever since then, we have had to write and design things so that way it fits into Palpatine's resurrection, essence transfer, all of those different things, which is absolutely insane. It sort of undermines Anakin. It undermines George Lucas's story across the board, right? It undermines what Anakin did in Return of the Jedi, flat out. So, and I cannot. Yeah, it's so frustrating that is just the way storytelling has had to go because one decision.
Yeah. The only project, if you look at all of the Star Wars projects that have come out since then, since The Last Jedi, right? Solo was obviously its own thing, which again, you and I liked.
Yeah.
The only project that hasn't had to tie that stuff in was Solo, or was Andor. Because Andor is we're going to focus on it being the Empire. It's the only thing.
No, you're right, because
that hasn't had to tie that in, right, to something. But that moment has essentially set us down the path that we're on now, where all these projects have to be tied, and they're hindered by that to where they can't be their own idea. And it's essentially caused all of the issues that we're going to have in Star Wars ever since.
Yeah, and it's the problem is that like they have all this gap filler that they want to do, right? So because they're trying to tie to like really significant time periods, there's this it's more recognizable when you're filling a gap between 6 and 7. We have all those characters there, and so no one has really wanted to venture too far away from the main series because they're afraid. I'll just be honest. So I think they're afraid to really step way back or to step way forward. It looks like maybe we're going to do like a Dawn of the Jedi thing at some point, but I don't really trust or believe anything that comes out now from Lucasfilm in terms of like projects that they're going to do, because
they flopped on everything they're going to do,
and they don't follow through on any of it. And it feels like, or if they do, it's changed. It just goes through so many different changes and stuff. And so anyways,
another one too. Now this wasn't necessarily like the Palpatine fault, but I do also wonder where we would be had they not fired Gina Carano. Because whether she deserved to get fired or not, because she's saying some things.
Yep.
Okay, if you said, hey, she is hateful towards trans people and you want to fire her, I'm not discrediting whether or not they did or they didn't fire her. But
Right.
if you think about where Star Wars could be had they not fired Gina Carano, we would have gotten Rangers of the New Republic.
True.
Meaning some of that content that got shoved into Book of Boba Fett might have existed outside of Book of Boba Fett, making Book of Boba Fett a better show.
True.
Because the problem with Book of Boba Fett was that they had to cram in all the Mandalorian stuff that probably was going to exist inside of Rangers of the New Republic.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Because it was going to be Gina Carano's show, and we were going to get Bo-Katan was going to be there.
Yep.
Even with Mandalorian season 3, I wonder how much of that stuff was going to be in Rangers, so that Mandalorian season 3, which was kind of like, it was a weaker season for that show. Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, it was good, but it wasn't amazing as the other 2 seasons had been. So if you don't have to maybe shove that stuff into Book of Boba Fett, then Book of Boba Fett can exist on its own, and maybe it's a much better project, because now it's like you get Book of Boba Fett, which kind of, it didn't hit as hard as they thought it would. Kenobi didn't hit as hard as they thought it would. So, like Rangers of the New Republic might have fixed a lot of story problems that they've had if you pull that stuff out. Because the biggest problem with Book of Boba Fett was that it was literally all over the place. Like you go 5 episodes and you're like, okay, I see what's going on here. Then you have an entire episode that is literally just the Mandalorian.
Yep.
And then like the end credits scene is also a Mandalorian, right? Yep. Or maybe it was end credits or whatever. End credits, post credits. We get another like Luke scene, right? With Grogu and everything. Well, Grogu comes back, but still, there was like in that last episode, they tied in stuff, right? Yep. So and then like Cad Bane shows up, and the average viewer is gonna have no idea who he is, because if you don't watch animation, like, who is this guy? And he's the villain. So that's another thing too, like the Gina Carano firing. Sometimes I do wonder, had she not gotten fired, where Star Wars would be, because I think that might have been the thing that derailed Book of Boba Fett, was that they were like, is Dave Filoni might be sitting there like, well, I need this stuff before Mando season 3. Yep. And that might have been in Rangers of the New Republic.
Yeah. And to your point about Cad Bane, they could have in Rangers of the New Republic, they could have put a villain in there like him and built him up, taken time and sort of started talking about this notorious bounty hunter from the Clone War era and all this different stuff, right? They could have built that character up a little bit more in live action, but they don't have a chance to, because the whole show is canceled because of that decision. And I think you're right. I think a lot of things did sort of then get pushed and spread around, which is why there's this awkward sort of feeling there. Another thing, going back to, not only just the Gina Carano thing, but then going all the way back to Rian Johnson's mistake in killing Snoke and having no plan going forward and having to rectify that. It is their confidence. And I think the way you put it was sort of like, they're playing it safe essentially with Kenobi, or they're playing it safe with certain shows. They're not hitting as hard. Like, for example, Boba Fett should have been a totally different feel, and it was this big softball, and it's just like, everyone loves Boba Fett, but it came out and it was such weak sauce that we're all sort of like, what is he out here doing with the freaking staff? And like, where's the bounty hunter that we like? It was such a, I don't know, like a safe move, I guess. And it felt so awkward. And I feel like that's the thing, is that we're playing really safe and we're going really slow, and we're really trying to like now slow everything down and reassess and look around and make sure that we hit our marks, so we can all kind of lead up into Rise of Skywalker appropriately, and we don't make a bunch of missteps. And it just feels like there's not a lot of confidence in these projects, so they're not ambitious enough or risky enough. So
here's another thing too, and I like what you just said, because I think about this too, is it was not just the decision to kill Snoke. I mean, that's, I think, is like the big one, but his treatment of Luke Skywalker.
Oh,
like,
dude.
Even now, like when you go back and you watch, like, as epic and amazing as the Mandalorian season 2 finale is, it's still like, how does Luke get to where he gets?
And that's the problem, Matt, is that you know what? Telling us that story would suck.
That like the decision to have Luke create a temple that fails and all that stuff. I mean, that's part of
your story.
That's part of Book of Boba Fett too.
Right. Book
of Boba Fett has Luke Skywalker in it, right? And part of that is now to fix Rian Johnson's mistakes. I mean, that literally,
You're right.
I mean,
you're freaking right.
It shifted everything.
It has shifted everything. And so if you say that Luke Skywalker does what he does in The Last Jedi and that he pulls his lightsaber and everything comes crumbling down and he essentially has this great moment of weakness or whatever, now you have to write all of your books and novels and comic books that they could have been writing about that time, the adventures of Luke Skywalker and him building his academy and growing everything. One, everything just looks a lot smaller than we thought it was going to be in terms of the sequels, in terms of his academy and stuff like that. And then two, the way he is beaten by himself and runs away and just hides and stuff like that. You have to get us to that Luke Skywalker. So whatever story you tell us to get there is not going to be legendary and epic and motivating. It's going to be full of like a character who's just going to slowly,
it's not going to have hope.
No, he's slowly going to be losing some of that hope and losing some of that vigor. And like, to tell that story sucks. It's actually going to look really strange when, like you said, at the end of Mandalorian season 2, you see that Luke Skywalker show up and you're like, dang, that's the one we know right there.
We wanted,
right? And so we know him and we wanted him later on, but to watch him from that moment and then to track his story, it will only go down. It will only go down from there. Like he will have this great fall off because he has to. Why does he have to have that great fall off? Because Rian Johnson said so, right? Rian Johnson said this is how the character has to end up, and so this is what we're going to do. And it's just like, and there's not enough moments to recover it, to make it epic in any way, shape, or form. Honestly, a big problem, like one of the agenda problems I think that Lucasfilm has with the sequels is that they just decided to take the legacy characters and subvert them and lift up their own characters, their created new babies, the new faces of Star Wars, and to lift them up instead of pairing them side by side with an epic, Leia or Han. I mean, they literally just said Leia and Han estranged. Luke, I mean, they put them in the most ridiculous, worst situations that they could. They basically just said that they failed, right? In later years, like, you have this moment of glory at the end of Return of the Jedi where everything's, awesome. They're heroes and all this kind of stuff. And then the next marker that you said is like their relationship is done. Their son fell to the dark side. I mean, you just subverted everything about them, told no backstory there. Now, all of your backstory has to be leading to that. It has to be about the turmoil between Han and Leia and how their relationship and marriage didn't work out, and how Snoke, who was not actually Snoke, was actually Emperor Palpatine, still alive on a distant planet, is talking to Snoke and who's trying to persuade. It's a joke. It's a joke. And that's terrible story that you have to fill in, gap filler that you have to fill in to make that work, because Rian Johnson decided, I'm going to kill Snoke and I'm going to tell, and then they had to revert back to, okay, let's bring back Palpatine. I mean, it's such a, like, John Boyega has actually been pissed about it.
Like, it was one thing when we were saying, oh, it derailed the franchise, when it was just it and Rise of Skywalker. But now that we're even a few more years removed from it, it's like, no, it's really derailed the franchise. I mean, it was like, now it's like, okay, before it was like, oh man, it was just that. And like when Mandalorian came out, we're like, okay, maybe they'll be able to fix this whole thing. Right.
Yeah.
But now we're 7 years removed and it's like, okay, now we have enough project to look back on and to be like, no, man, that thing really did derail the franchise, because it's all the stories tie into trying to fix this and create something different. And even still, you still feel hindered. Like even when I watch The Mandalorian and you're like, yeah, this is all cool stories, don't get me wrong, but like, I know where it's going. And I just like, even still, like, it's almost weird. There's a big time jump too, like, it's like, we look at other projects too, where we're like, like say Game of Thrones. Right. And we're, we've watched the show, we've, read the books. I'm like, I don't know how in the books, because the show obviously continues on after, but like, I don't know how he's going to get to the end of this in like 2 books. There's there's too much to tell. And even watching Mandalorian, I'm like, I don't know how they're going to get to the First Order and everything, because there's still like there's a ton you're going to have to fill the gaps in.
Right. Way too much story. And the only thing that I think they could do is, you look at episodes 4, 5, and 6, and they took place over a span of 3 to 4, maybe 5 years. I think it was 4 years. And so that's a cool moment. That's the rise of Luke Skywalker and this hero in the rebellion. You could do, because you still have 30 years and they've kind of jumped ahead, not quite 30, more like 20, 25 maybe. Yeah. But they have some time to maybe do a slight rise, but not much, because then it has to come back down because of who
it has to get, the First Order has to get big enough fast enough. Like the First Order still, I mean, because it's big.
Matter. Right.
I mean, it's like, it's not just a small little operation like what you have in the Mandalorian, where it's like the shadow, of the Empire.
Right.
Doing it, I mean,
Right,
like
right.
the remnants of the Empire. I mean, it's like there's a lot to tell. You need to tell. And I just don't know, even still, like, they said, hey, we want to do a Rey movie, and John Boyega might be like, I'm out. Adam Driver might be like, I'm out. And you want to go in this new direction and stuff like that. But I don't know that even then you can still.
I think they've tabled that. I think they've tabled that because they don't know what to do. They don't have any ideas. If you bear with me for give me 2 minutes.
I got all day.
All right, I'm gonna lay something down for you. If you wanted from me the one thing that I think could save sort of this time gap and make an epic character, take a terrible situation with the Luke Skywalker stuff and try to turn it into something cool and epic that would maybe tie back into the Rey series later on, if you wanted to, is it would be ambitious. It would be extremely risky, and you would not want to play politics with it at all. You would not want to. You would just want to come in, play to the base and to your fandom, and you would take a character, one of the students that Luke would find. They wouldn't all be little Padawans. They wouldn't all be younger. This would be a slightly different Luke. Like, he's not going to try to train all of these kids that are under 10 and do what Yoda and Obi-Wan does. Like, what he did in Legends was he found some adults who were Jedi, and he had some other, individuals that he could quickly train up, and they were more mature, and they could be masters, and they could be trusted. I've said this in a couple different places before, and it sounds crazy, but one thing that you could do is, okay, let me set some context here before I say what I'm about to say, because it's going to shock some folks. But it's when you got into the Rise of Skywalker, they had to explain why Leia laid her lightsaber down. And what did they do? They said, like, until that point, we had no idea. Well, like, Leia is this character. We're seeing her arc. Carrie Fisher passes away. Rian Johnson does what he does. We get into Rise of Skywalker, and you have to salvage it. You have to save it somehow. Like, I actually don't even super fault them for bringing back Palpatine, because what else are you going to freaking do? You know what I mean? You kind of have, like, who's the villain? You double down on Kylo Ren being the bad guy, or who's the next villain? You just killed Supreme Leader. Was it going to be Hux? Is that the guy? Like, what do you actually do? So JJ says, here's what we're going to do. And he makes a vision. He says, okay, how about this? What if Leia had a vision a long time ago, and she's training with Luke? Boom, boom, boom. Cool little flashback scene. And we're all like, that was a sparkling moment in Rise of Skywalker. And then she decides to lay her lightsaber down because she has a force vision of something to come. It's contrived, right? It's super contrived because it has to be, because they had to tell the story of why she's not a Jedi and why the lightsaber is there for Rey. And this is sort of her, how she brings Ben back. But she did a force vision, and then you put it in there and you say, okay, this is the story. Same thing could happen if you brought in a Legends character that everyone loves, and people would say, oh, there's no way you could do it. You could bring in Mara Jade. You could actually bring this character in, and you could legitimately have her be one of the adults. She could even be a foe at first for Luke Skywalker. And Jedi, as we know, and I'll go ahead and say it, in the High Republic, they're already saying Jedi hook up. Jedi hook up all the time.
I know where you're going. I know
what I'm saying?
going. Yeah.
And it's like, so you could do that, and you could have this moment where basically Mara says, like, she's pregnant. She gets a force vision, just like freaking Leia does. And she says, I need to leave. My children will die if I have them here at this temple with Luke, and this whole thing, blah, blah, blah. And these become the heirs, and the actual freaking legacy of Skywalker, and the actual freaking bloodline can continue. They took the Skywalker bloodline and they killed it off. Ben Solo, dead, right? Luke has no children, no Mara Jade, no nothing. Like, Ben Solo was everything. I mean, people were speculating, did he lay his hand on Rey and impregnate Rey because he, forced dyad stuff? Like, taking out the Skywalker legacy is absolutely insane. And the fact that they did that is nuts. So there is a bold way to do it through Mara Jade if they want to, and have her go off to the unknown regions. Years later, Rey hears a rumor that there's a group of Jedi training, and she's forming her own thing, and they're their own thing. There's ways to do it and be bold, but that boldness is gone because of the decisions that they made during the sequels, and they are afraid, and they don't know how to do it. They've lost the fandom. They're now pushing politics, and they're making the fandom out to be the enemy. And that sucks, because we all want Star Wars to freaking succeed. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm with
Said
you.
it-
Yeah, and actually, I agree. Actually, you also could actually even have. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the best thing they could do would be to tell the Mara Jade story and have Luke have actual Skywalker bloodline continue. I think that'd be the
Be sick.
that'd be the best way to do it, or even possibly have a Kenobi line out there somewhere,
Oh God.
right?
Yeah.
Then actually
God.
maybe what you could do is, if you do have a Rey movie or something like that, you could have Rey go dark side for a little bit, and she could get saved by the Skywalker kids, because then it would actually kind of lift up that dark side Rey vision in Rise of
Yeah.
Skywalker a little bit,
Yeah.
to be more than just like tying into that movie, to be like, oh no, like there actually is darkness in her. And you could even in a way it could be like Palpatine is in a way still part of her, because she is a Palpatine.
True.
Right.
True.
You know what I mean?
True.
So like you could do that, and that would actually, I think, fix a lot of the stuff that feels like we're just trying to get Palpatine back. Right.
Yeah, actually, yeah, from the back end, almost like beyond Rise of Skywalker, you're actually still going back and trying to fix a little bit by taking a Rey character and making her more dark, or making her struggle with some of that stuff. You're actually showing her Palpatine identity more, and then you have a Skywalker legacy possibly continue, or Kenobi legacy, or something sick like that. Like that is actually all possible. There are bold creative decisions that they could make. There's the Corky Kryze theory that's still out there. Like Corky is in the Clone Wars, and he looks just like Obi-Wan, and he looks like he's being fostered by his aunt, and everyone's pretending like he has a sister out there.
Right.
Her sister is Bo-Katan, and she's like so there's a third sister. There's Satine, Bo-Katan, and someone else. No one knows who the third sister is. There is no third sister. That's Kenobi's freaking child. So anyway, it's possible. I'm glad you brought that up. But yeah, there are creative ways to do it, and I think they're writing this Rey series just thinking, okay, cool, we're gonna have her. What's the plot and the story in that? I can't imagine what it's gonna be. It's scary.
You know what else? I also want to bring this up about the Acolyte is, and then just thinking about this too as we're talking, is, the Acolyte also in a way kind of ruins the Mandalorian, because the whole deal about Anakin. Right. That's been the whole deal about Star Wars, right? Is Anakin might have been created by the Force and all of these things. And then they said, no, we want to play with that. And like other people have found out how to do that too. Well, that was what the mystery of Grogu was about, because Grogu is born in the same year. Like that whole thing is like untouched. That whole year is untouched in Star Wars history. It's like,
true.
Is that Anakin and Grogu are born in the same year? And what's the mystery there?
Yep.
And now you've kind of even ruined that, because it's like, well, now I don't know, like it was like, did the Force create two people, whatever? And now you're like, no, we're going to do our own version of it. And like the problem is like Disney let it happen. And now you have a project that did have a lot of implications to big Star Wars lore, and it flopped, and now we might never get to know what happened. It actually ruined a lot of things by doing all of these things. And it did it in a way that felt like it was sort of spitting in the face of the fans. So it's like it flopped, and you did it, and you like had like major lore implications, and some of them were things that like should never have happened. Right, like you very easily could have just had anybody other than Ki-Adi-Mundi.
Oh, for sure.
Say it, but you chose him specifically, and then it just creates weirdness and confusion to the prequels, and it was completely unnecessary, and that is the problem. I mean, like I could list 1,000 problems wrong with the Acolyte, and not a single one of them has to do with the diversity of the characters or it being woke. I mean,
no. Yeah, I know, dude. I think you're spot on, because that project failing is actually a big deal, because as we said, you're trying to fix things. Everything since The Last Jedi, you're trying to fix it, make it work with Palpatine. You're doing all your different stuff. It's all lining up. It's very safe. Like the Bad Batch is all this different backstory and setup. Cool. Then you go to the Acolyte, and you could set up, again, you could just tell a unique story outside of the Skywalker saga, and you could tell the backstory sort of a Palpatine and lead up to a crazy freaking series or something with that. And you totally squandered it. You ticked off the fans because you were sort of dictating to the prequels. You're basically saying that, like, when Ki-Adi-Mundi is sitting there on the council, like, and he says that phrase, you're basically saying, or to any of the Jedi Council members, you're saying there's a reason why they say that. There's a reason why they are or they aren't doing those things. There's a reason why they don't train Anakin, and Anakin's too old. Like, you brought up the whole Obi-Wan Kenobi being too old and all those different things, right? It's like they tried to basically say that, like, well, it's because of our character that we created that the Jedi do this later on. What we do here makes a big impact on what they do there. It's like, no, the thinking and rationale by George Lucas and his characters in Phantom Menace they're not dictated to by you. And that's sort of a problem. Just make your story there. You don't have to. You could make a complete story that has very little tie-in, maybe just little echoes or foreshadowings or something, but no direct implications to actual characters that still exist in that movie. And so like you said, we could probably go through, 15, 60, 20, 50, I don't know, like tons of problems with the Acolyte, but none of them had to do with diversity. And it's just such a bummer because there's no future story now for Plagueis. There's no future story on this Chimera character. I thought, Chimera is a cool idea, like having an Acolyte, no problem, cool. But and having him best to the Jedi overall is one thing, and just being just being better than them. But instead, you also went and said, no, the Jedi suck. They also tell lies, and there's this whole conspiracy going on there and everything. And it's subverting, again, like Luke Skywalker, like taking them down a notch and saying these heroes that you like, this order, they're not all good, which doing a little bit of that is one thing. It's literally every single character in that show makes poor decisions and lies and looks bad. And it wasn't well received. And so now what do you do? Like now what do you do with that whole time period right there? That was supposed to be their lead-in, right? If Acolyte is successful, they could maybe now do a TV show about the New Republic, all the books that they're making, and they could do a Vanestra Rose stuff. They could. I mean, they've
been trying to have the High Republic work for years. They said we're gonna have a big launch, like all of the book content, the comics, all of those things we're doing. We are gonna go so heavy into the High Republic. And the Acolyte was going to be the thing that made the High Republic cool, and it flopped. So now you're talking about years worth of work outside of just this show that is probably never going to see the light of day on screen because that failed.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I think, like, because of its failure, the other thing that they immediately said after it was done, you get the executive stepping in and saying, we're slowing down. Now we're going to slow down, which is probably actually a good thing.
That's what they said. That's what they said after Solo flop. They said, well, we got to slow down, and then they didn't do anything. Right? I mean, they've been announcing Star Wars movies for years. We haven't seen a single one of them.
Exactly.
The Game of Thrones creators are going to get one. Never saw that. Rogue Squadron's going to happen. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, I mean, they've flopped back and forth on that like 15 times.
They don't know.
Ryan Johnson was supposed to get a trilogy. Taika Waititi was supposed to get a movie. We haven't seen.
That's fallen through now.
We haven't seen any of that stuff.
No,
we're supposed to get a Lando show, Rangers of the New Republic. All of these things, not a single one of them's happened.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, the Acolyte was announced years ago as well, and so they had all this time where you're like, okay, you can map this out, you can plan this show out, talk about it. It's going to be the thing that you're going to hang your hat on. I mean, really, they were making it out to be this huge thing for the summer. It's the next big thing, and it sort of opens up possible other series and all this different stuff. And you could almost kind of tell from Leslie Headland that, like, she kept framing it like, if it does get canceled, well, I'm writing it to be kind of one season. You remember how she kept saying, like, this will be she talked
about it the same way. She talked about the Acolyte the same way Ryan Johnson talked about The Last Jedi. Is it's going to be like my project. I'm going to push the boundaries. You did, and both of them failed. That's why I'm saying, like, people want to get on Kathleen Kennedy for being more involved and more pushy, and then, like, ironically, she did nothing. It feels like. I could be wrong. I don't know the insides and outs, but it feels like you don't hear the rumors about writers being fired, directors, and this and that. You don't hear that happening with any of the stuff for Ryan Johnson, and you don't hear about any of that stuff with Leslie Headland. And you're like, maybe you should have been more involved, right? I mean, it almost feels like they negotiated and said, hey, I'll come do this thing for you, but I want complete control, and I want to do what I'm going to do. complete creative
Right.
control,
and
it
it's signed
didn't work.
somewhere in their contract or something, and so they got to go do their thing, and that is a poor decision on her part to let them just go in and write whatever the heck they want and make a terrible show, because now you've squandered an opportunity to tell a really cool Plagueis, Sidious backstory, and fine, have Chimera be the point of view character through that. That actually would be okay. Maybe Chimera freaking gets killed by Palpatine later on. He lives super long. I mean, like, there's intriguing things there, that he's super old and he's Venestra's apprentice. Okay. But you made all of your characters just so unlikable and so terrible. And I think I love people were talking about like Master Yoda. They're like, so glad that they saved. And that's
That
the
they didn't
only
use
thing.
him. Yeah.
They did. Yeah. Like,
Hey,
how
we finally
dare you?
we finally get to see a Wookiee Jedi. What's he gonna do? I bet he gets to do something super cool. Oh, he's over there with a metal detector.
Unbelievable, dude. Unbelievable. And like, yeah, like, see, there's one cool fight scene, but like the fight scene, he's controlled by the witches. So the Wookiee who's like doing all these cool fight moves is actually controlled by them. And like, then no one understood like how they were all killed, and it all just felt like contrived and awkward. And it just, man, it was bad. It was honestly really, really bad. And I hate to say that, because again, want it to be successful, but I mean, it makes Obi-Wan Kenobi's series look like freaking gold. You know what I mean? It makes it look, I mean, and it had its problems, but I mean, anyway. So, all right. Well,
Let's talk about let's move on to another Star Wars project that's failing. Okay, in a different sphere here, as you know, Star Wars Outlaws, my friend. You know, the fans were saying this is gonna suck before it came out. We tried to warn Ubisoft. We said, hey, we don't like the pricing of this. We're looking at the graphics. It doesn't look particularly good. And I think that Star Wars Outlaws is so bad, it might not just be like a bad game. It might actually be the death of Ubisoft. If you go take a look at Ubisoft's stock price, just go on to pull up Google Finance on your thing there, and type in Ubisoft and see what comes up, because their stock price has been declining since 2021. But Star Wars Outlaws came out. It got panned by video game reviewers, and their stock dropped, and it's almost down to like $1 now. Like, Ubisoft stock prices fell so far, and Star Wars Outlaws tanked it after it got panned by reviewers, and they even came out and said, yeah, it's not hitting our sales expectations, that Ubisoft may have to get bought out by somebody, because their market cap is now so low, and it's just continued to drop and drop over the past couple of years, that like Microsoft or one of these other big companies might come in and be like, yeah, we're just going to buy you, because it's bad. I mean, it might literally be. I mean, they have intellectual properties that people are going to want. I mean, Ubisoft won't go out of business. Somebody's going to step in and buy them just for Assassin's Creed alone. I mean, it's worth it just for Assassin's Creed to step in and buy them for $1 billion. I mean, but they've got Assassin's Creed, Rayman, Splinter Cell, Watch Dogs, For Honor. I mean, Just Dance. I mean, they've definitely got properties that people are going to want. But I mean, they've been on a bad path to begin with. But Star Wars Outlaws might be the thing that's like, okay, because their stock tanked the other day, and I don't think it's coming back up. I mean, because it's been on a decline for the past couple years. So, I mean, like, here's some of the problems with the game. For starters, you know, they promised this big open world, you know, game that you're going to be able to play, and it does deliver on some of that, but it's just mid. Like, it's just so mid. Nothing about the game feels special. Nothing about the game feels like you're in this great big Star Wars world. Like, you know, like when you play Jedi Survivor or you play Jedi Fallen Order, the game felt special, right? I mean, it looked good. Obviously, you know, there was some problems with PC, but I mean, the story was a very straightforward story that you got to be part of, and it just felt like, hey, this is Star Wars. This is cool. Cal Kestis, great character. Right. In Star Wars Outlaws, it just lacks all of that magic that we've seen on some of the other Star Wars games, you know, in the past. Even Battlefront 2, you gotta do that campaign with Iden Versio, right? It's a short 5-hour campaign, and that was, you know, a lot of fun. This just feels like every other, you know, open world action adventure game that tries to exist in today's video game landscape. There's these stealth missions you have to go on, and if you fail, it's just like at any point, you have to start the entire thing completely over. There's like no checkpoints or anything. They're supposed to be putting out a patch to finish it. Yeah, and just a lot of the animations and stuff like that just don't feel that cool. Like literally there's like, you know, in some games, you know, like the sneaking animations, right? Where sometimes you can like get behind somebody and you can like do a takedown. It's like this cool takedown. She literally just like bops a stormtrooper on the head. And so it's just like none of it feels fun or cool. There's really no other way to describe it. It's just like mid. I mean, it's mid. I mean, that is the only word I can use to describe the game. There's nothing unique or special about it whatsoever. You could completely reskin this and any other thing, and it's just still going to be the exact same game. It just happens to be a Star Wars one.
Dude, that's crazy. And I'm just reading different articles and stuff over here who are talking about, like just like you're saying that the finances are bad. They'll talk about possible buyout. I mean, it's all
I think I mean, they still have, you know, they still have like another big Assassin's Creed game coming out and stuff like that. But I mean, their stock's been declining for the past couple of years, and this game really tanked it. I mean, it really caused their stock to tank, and now it's getting down to the point to where somebody might step in and buy it. My first thought would be Microsoft, but I don't know if Microsoft actually would be allowed to buy them at this point, because then the FCC might literally be like, you're too big, like it's a monopoly, because they bought Blizzard. They bought Blizzard Activision a couple of years ago, and they had to go through all. I mean, they almost weren't allowed to do that just because they're like, you're too big of a monopoly. Of course, they have you know, Diablo and Call of Duty was the big one. Sony is the other one who I could think maybe step in, and you know, then you look at a lot of the other third-party developers. And actually, I wouldn't be shocked if like Amazon stepped in and bought them, just because they have a lot of money and they own Twitch and they have their own kind of gaming stuff going on. Or maybe you see somebody like a big movie studio like Disney actually step in and buy them, just because like I think the Assassin's Creed franchise alone is worth the $1 billion just to own that intellectual property. And then maybe you look at some of the Japanese developers. The only one I actually could see even trying to do it, Nintendo, I don't think would touch them, just because Nintendo has like $12 billion in cash on hand. I mean, they could just buy them like tomorrow, and it's like a drop in the bucket to them. I actually think Sega could be the one to do it, because Sega has been aggressive in the past couple of years, and they bought Atlas, who makes like the Persona games and stuff like that. They don't have as much cash on hand as Nintendo, but I would not be shocked if it's like a
48% drop over the last year.
If you go back like 3 weeks and look at like the Star Wars Outlaws news, I mean, in one day it's like boom.
Yeah.
Huge. I mean, it's a significant drop. And it's literally
because
Star Wars
they're expecting
Outlaws.
it. Right. They're expecting to drop that and it go swing the opposite direction, even though we've already had significant, downs. They're hoping that comes back around, and it's not. You're right.
The game would sell really well, and it didn't.
Dude, I mean, it's just like, they have lost. This game has no magic whatsoever. I don't care. I didn't care to buy it. I looked at it. I saw people been watching a few streams, and they're looking at all the glitches and different things. I know you're gonna. Glitchy. Yeah, I know people are like, we're gonna fix it. We're gonna do this or whatever. But like, for that much money for people to come out and buy it and it be that piss poor, it just seems like I'm glad I didn't buy it yet. And the other thing is, like you said with Cal Kestis, I mean, you got a backstory there. You have a Jedi, Order 66 survivor. It felt special. It had the magic. And this, I'm looking at this character and people are going to say, well, it's because it has nothing to do with it. You brought up Iden Versio. Amazing. There's a whole book about that character. A whole extra, story. We're hoping
she shows up.
Dude, I know.
And she's done voice acting and stuff like that. And she's crazy. She was an extra or something, or she was like in a helmet or something for Book of Boba Fett or something. I mean, she's been like on set.
Yes. Yeah, true.
We're hoping I would love for her. If they wanted to retell that story on screen.
Oh, I know. They could.
Inferno
that
Squad.
Would be huge.
That would be good. If they had said, hey, we're going to do Inferno Squad instead of the Acolyte, down.
Right. I mean, that's something that could bring it back again. And you've got a strong female there. You've got her. You've got her cast already. Like, it would be very interesting. Again, that story does play into the Operation Cinder. Got to get to Palpatine, whatever. But that's one of if you have to do it. No one's going to blame Star Wars now that Rian Johnson did what he did. No one's going to blame them for trying to, thread that needle and get us back to a moment where Emperor Palpatine is back. Somehow he's back.
But Operation Cinder and all that stuff is basically like, it's just Operation Cinder is going to happen whether he comes back or not.
or not. True. That's true. It is going to happen. And so that still is, yeah, it's more just the backstory and it's a filler. It talks about, I mean, basically the implications after the first Death Star is destroyed and stuff, and their whole,
I mean,
the
the opening chapter in Inferno Squad is so powerful because you get this story told to you from somebody of the Empire, and they literally just cannot believe that the Death Star was destroyed. I mean, the only, like, to me, it's like, you and I, it's crazy now because it seems so weird, but saying this out loud is like, it's like 9/11, right? It's like, we couldn't believe it happened. But there are kids and younger people that are like, I did when I was doing my student teaching, and I talked about 9/11. They're like, they didn't. I could tell it wasn't hitting those kids as hard as it did me because I'm a history, and because they weren't there for it. So
they were there.
That was like the first time I was like, wow, I'm old, But like same type of a thing where you're just looking at it, it's like, I cannot believe this is happening. And that's I felt that emotion in that opening chapter of Inferno Squad. It's a great book. That's something Star Wars really doesn't do, is adapt books, like Star Wars books and stuff, into movies. But there's a ton of them that they should.
That they should, for sure. You what's crazy is that they took a lot of the
Phasma would actually, I think Phasma would be a great story.
Oh yeah, Phasma would be like a standalone. You could do a standalone movie on that. That was actually pretty sick. And
even if it's just a mini series or something like that, like the Phasma book would be a great thing. Yeah.
That was a good one. And you're right.
The second book kind of sucked.
Oh, I don't know. I didn't.
The second one is it's about the oh God, I'm blanking on it. It goes Phasma into what's the thing at the or not at Universal, but at Disneyland, at Disney World.
Oh, Galaxy's Edge or whatever.
Galaxy's Edge, yeah, but the Batu or not Batu,
Batu,
whatever. Yeah. So
but Phasma would be good, and then also having the Iden Versio story would be sick. Like in the Battlefront game, when you get to the point where Luke Skywalker shows up, right? And you've got Del Meeko in there talking to Luke. That's one of the coolest, like, actual Luke lore things that we had going on. And Iden's still out there doing her thing. And that was still like Iden has a child who could have been, you could start with that story and build an Iden Versio story and build some lore around that name and stuff. And they just, nope, It's so many ideas that start and stop that don't finish and don't seem to be like, oh, they didn't get the numbers, they didn't get this or whatever. And so we're just going to squander that storyline, and it never goes anywhere. It goes down to comics, and it just sucks. So, one of the things that they did adapt, which was one of the more controversial comic book series, was the Dark Empire comics book series, which is what they kind of pulled like the resurrected Emperor Palpatine from. And it was super controversial, but like there's things in there that were, interesting and bold and unique. And then now with Thrawn, like having Thrawn come back in. So, there are Legends characters that you can bring back in, make them work in canon, and have some sort of lore tie back in, or some nostalgic tie to the Legends time period. I hope they do more of that. And I mean, Iden was their own thing. Iden was like their own. That was Disney's character, and a good one. So
great.
It's mind boggling. A female character that's really solid and that has this whole crew around her and everything. And
why? Because the plot's good.
The plot's great. It's like so amazing. They don't even like, where's that project? Why does that fall to the wayside? And then, I mean, honestly, Matt, they probably were going to do a Rogue Squadron movie, and I guarantee it wouldn't even have touched on Iden. Like, and that's stupid, because if it falls during that time period, it definitely should, right? She's around and stuff. Like, I guarantee they would do things like that, where you've got these big characters and they're like, well, Patty Jenkins really wants to tell her story and she's going to make her own characters. And like, no, you're coming into this, like the Star Wars sandbox. You know what I mean? Look at what everybody else has sort of done. Dave Filoni's not ashamed to go get Thrawn and say, I'm gonna bring Thrawn back. I didn't create him. Timothy Zahn did. Like, it's just foolish to think you have to create all these different, I don't know, that you're not playing ball with the actual fandom. You almost want to come in and it's like a stamp on their resume, and it just feels like, it just doesn't feel like people are, I don't know, they're not bringing the right people in to create Star Wars stuff, and it sucks. So, yeah, I don't know. Depressing, dude. Yeah, kind of a depressing end to the episode. There is hope, but like we've outlined a few different things. Maybe we'll come back and we'll actually talk about like some legitimate.
Maybe the Mandalorian Grogu movie will be awesome.
Yeah, that's gonna be sick. And I feel like Ahsoka 2 could be really cool. They definitely have You know what's going to happen though is they're going to take Ezra Bridger and they're going to do something freaking stupid with him. They're going to do something stupid.
Yeah,
that character.
We still need to do an entire episode just on Ahsoka at some point in the future.
Yeah,
because you and I haven't talked about it. But yeah, Ahsoka just it didn't do it for me. I was really going into that excited, especially like everything Dave Filoni's touched has been good. Another thing, just real quick.
Yeah,
is man, you and I covered all of them. Is Visions. Every one of these things were like, we're like, oh, I didn't like this episode. I did like this. So I was like, man, I really wish they would do something with this, but they're just fine with them being these standalone little stories that go nowhere. I even thought Vision season 2 was like, maybe they'll have like a continuation, like the Ninth Jedi, right?
Right.
Some of those things were like, oh, this, and what was the Toby or one?
Yeah, dude. Oh my gosh, dude, that was sick.
And none of that stuff got to go anywhere, and it's so sad because it was like, wow, we really liked some of this stuff.
And it's so crazy because it feels kind of like it was just a token we're going to put in here a little bit, like, hey, we're just going to do this and not do anything with it.
We're going to appease the Japanese audience, and because hey, look, we did some Star Wars anime, and it's like, but what are you going to do with it?
What are you going to do? Yeah, it doesn't really even count in terms of our legendarium. It's just sort of cool. It's almost like it's what if, like it's just make believe, but. The one with the Ninth Jedi was sick, dude. You talk about something they should do in the future. They should flash forward like 500 plus years and like no Rey, no nothing. And everything's sort of just totally changed. And there's like the way they set that up with like lightsabers being like having a lightsaber smith and all these different things. I was a sick setup, with some cool backstory that we all would know. The dramatic irony is we all know the history, and then you go into that and none of the characters do. But anyway, yeah, I mean, we'll have to come back and do an Ahsoka breakdown because I think they're gonna trash Ezra Bridger. Unfortunately, I think they're, again, why? Because they need Sabine and Ahsoka to be awesome. I can already call it, right? It already kind of has to be like Ezra had his moment in Rebels. That was his big moment. Now Sabine has to have hers in live action. It's just what we're doing. So Ezra's gonna be squandered. We're gonna bring him back just to have him squandered, and I can almost guarantee it. I can almost call it, which is sad because we've seen it, and even though it's Dave Filoni, right? But and that's his character. But I won't be surprised at all if it's all for the sake of the Mandalorians and for Sabine and Ahsoka and everything. So yeah, we'll do that. We'll maybe bring some theories back and talk about like actually legitimately what we think, more about what we think we could do with that time period, fill that gap. And then move on, because the next thing that's coming out really December is what is that? It's got Jude Law in it. It's the one
Skeleton Crew.
Skeleton Crew. Thank you. Yeah, Skeleton Crew's coming out, and so that's set, I think, around the same time period we're talking about. I think this is all that Mando verse that we were sort of talking about, but it might be a tie into Ahsoka. So maybe that'll get us back and fired up about Star Wars. But right now, the Acolyte has left such a bad taste in everyone's mouth that it is it's actually bled over to the Star Wars fandom, and there's fighting going on and petitions to demonetize people. I've never seen a project be like that ridiculous and that bad. Like that's the backlash on it, and it's just
and we end on this.
Yeah,
it's all because of Snoke.
It's all because of Snoke, dude. Oh, God, our Snoke theories sucked, or did they? They were better than what we got. My God. All right, friends. Well, until next time, don't forget, I got links down in the description. Go check out all of Matt's socials down there. Follow us, and we'll be back because this is fun. I think this is we're gonna need a few more candid talks about Star Wars just to kind of get some things straight, because it is in disarray. I hope someone at Lucasfilm listens once in a while. So, all right, that's all for today. Thanks so much, and as always, may the Force be with you.
It's over, Commander.
Did you hear that?
Don't underestimate the Force.